I always thought my daughter had my eyes. That same sharp hazel hue. The way they crinkled when she smiled, it was one of those things that made me feel deeply connected to her. She was my world, my little girl. I never questioned anything until that parent-teacher conference turned into a nightmare. It was supposed to be a normal school project, just a simple genetics assignment. The kids were learning about dominant and recessive traits, and the school thought it would be fun to do a DNA matching test using cheek swabs from parents and children. Harmless, right? At least that's what I thought until the teacher pulled me aside with a look I'll never forget. "Mr. Farhan, there's something we need to discuss in private." My heart started pounding. I assumed maybe my daughter Noor had gotten into a fight or failed a test. But when she slid the printed report across the desk, my whole body froze. It said I wasn't a biological match. "Noor's DNA doesn't match yours," the teacher said softly. "Is there a possibility that you're not her father?" That question shattered me. I laughed at first. I thought maybe it was a lab mix-up or a prank. But the look in her eyes said otherwise. That was the moment the seed of doubt was planted, a seed that would grow into the most painful truth I've ever had to face. I walked out of that classroom like a ghost. Noor ran up to me in the hallway, holding my hand like she always did, beaming about how fun the science experiment was. I smiled. But inside, I was breaking. If I wasn't her father, then who was? And what did that mean about the woman I married, the woman I trusted with everything? I wish I could tell you that I figured things out quickly. I wish I could say it was all just a mistake. But this was only the beginning of a truth far darker than I was prepared for. My name is Farhan, and for the last 10 years, I've lived what most people would call a good, stable life. I'm a software engineer by profession, quiet, methodical, the kind of guy who brings his lunch to work and double-checks the locks before going to bed. I'm not flashy. I don't chase excitement. All I've ever wanted was a peaceful home and a loving family. And for a while, I truly believed I had that. My wife, Maywish, was the kind of woman who lit up a room. Everyone loved to hear her laugh, her wit, her effortless charm. She worked part-time at a local NGO, and people often said we balanced each other perfectly. She brought the color, and I brought the calm. We met through mutual friends. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic. Just a few casual meetups, coffee dates that turned into long drives. And before I knew it, we were married. A year later, we had Noor. I remember the night she was born like it happened yesterday. Maywish was exhausted, but the moment she held our daughter, she cried big, beautiful tears. And when I saw that tiny face, my heart expanded in a way I didn't know was possible. From day one, Noor was my shadow. She followed me everywhere. Morning cuddles, evening cartoons. Her tiny hand is always reaching for mine. We built Lego castles and painted messy masterpieces on weekends. When she called me Baba, it felt like the most sacred word in the universe. Everyone said she looked like me, and I believed it. Even when people said, "She's got her mom's smile," I proudly add, "But my eyes, right?" That became a running joke in our house. So when the DNA test said otherwise, something inside me cracked. Still, it felt impossible. Maywish and I weren't perfect, sure. We had our share of arguments about work, chores, her spending habits sometimes, but nothing major. Nothing that ever made me question her love or her loyalty. We weren't the couple who cheated. Or so I thought. I started replaying old memories in my head like a detective. Was there ever a time she acted strange? Distant? I came up blank. Her life had always been normal. The kind of normal people envy. And that's what scared me most. If this wasn't real, if even this could be a live-in, what else was I blind to? I tried to act normal after the school meeting. I didn't want Noor to see me unravel. But every time I looked at her, I saw that paper again. The cold, clinical line, "No paternal match found." Still, some part of me refused to believe it. I told myself it was a mix-up, a lab error, something technical. Because the alternative? The alternative would mean that the woman I loved had betrayed me in the worst way possible. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. First, I needed answers. Quietly. Carefully. Because this wasn't just about me. This was about Noor, my daughter. The one I'd raised, loved, and protected since the moment she came into this world. Biology or not, she was mine. But the truth? The truth was about to turn my entire world upside down. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there next to Maywish, listening to the rhythm of her breathing. So calm, so steady, like she had no idea the ground beneath us had cracked wide open. My mind was spinning with questions I couldn't ask. Not yet. I needed proof. So, I did something I never thought I'd do in our 10 years of marriage. I waited until she fell into a deep sleep, then slowly reached over to her nightstand and picked up her phone. My hands were shaking. She always kept her phone locked, but I knew the code. She didn't hide it. That, somehow, made me feel even worse. Guilty, like I was the one breaking the trust. But the image of that DNA report kept flashing in my mind, louder than any guilt. I opened her messages. At first, everything looked normal. Group chats with her friends. A conversation with her sister. School updates. But then I saw a name I didn't recognize. ADL. No heart emoji. No flirty name. Just ADL. Simple. Clean. Forgettable. But I'd never heard of him before. The most recent message was from 2 days ago. Just one line. It's not safe to talk here. Call me when he's not around. My throat dried. I scrolled up. The chat history had been mostly deleted except for a few stray messages that slipped through the cracks. You promised me this wouldn't come out. He's starting to ask questions. Be careful. I don't want to lose everything. Each line hit me like a punch to the chest. What was she hiding? And who the hell was Adil? I closed the messages and quietly placed the phone back. I didn't sleep a second that night. Just stared at the ceiling, my mind twisting in circles. The next morning, Maywish acted like everything was normal. She hummed while brushing Noor's hair. She reminded me to take my vitamins. She kissed me on the cheek before I left for work. And all I could do was smile and lie. Because now, I was watching her. I didn't confront her not yet. I needed more. I needed to know how deep this went. I needed to be sure. So I took the next step. I hired a private investigator. I know, it sounds extreme. Paranoid. Maybe even cowardly. But I couldn't afford to blow this up unless I had the full truth in my hands. I owed that to myself and to Noor. The investigator's name was Kamran. Ex-cop. No nonsense. I gave him everything I knew, the DNA results, the texts, the name Adiel. He just nodded and said, "Give me a few days." Those days felt like years. Every time Maywish laughed, I wondered if it was real. Every time she hugged Noor, I questioned whether guilt lingered behind her smile. And every second that passed, I feared the answer more and more. Because deep down, I already knew. Something had happened. Something big. And the woman I shared my life with was hiding it from me. The days that followed were a blur of forced smiles and fake normalcy. Every moment with Maywish felt like walking out a tightrope pretending nothing was wrong while my entire world teetered on the edge of collapse. I watched her closer than ever. The way she avoided eye contact when I mentioned the school project. How she changed the subject every time I brought up Noor's DNA results, brushing it off with, "These school experiments aren't always accurate." And then, there was her phone suddenly always face down, always locked. I was drowning in questions, but I said nothing. Because what do you even say to the woman you've loved for a decade when you're starting to believe she built your entire life on a lie? I started doubting myself. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the DNA test really was wrong. Those things aren't always foolproof, right? I wanted to believe that. God, I needed to believe that. But the voice in my head wouldn't shut up. She's hiding something. You saw the messages. You saw the name. At night, I'd lie in bed with my back to her, eyes wide open, listening to every breath she took, wondering if she was awake too, scared I might already know. One evening, I came home early from work. Noor was at a friend's house, and the apartment was unusually quiet. Maywish was in the kitchen, talking on the phone. I stopped just before the hallway and listened. I told you not to message me again. What if he sees it? He's not stupid, Adiel. He's suspicious already. Her voice was sharp, hushed. I felt something collapse in my chest. She was still talking to him. I could have walked in right then. Demanded answers. Screamed. Cried. But I didn't. I tiptoed back to the door, made some noise like I had just arrived, and walked in like nothing happened. She smiled. You're home early. I nodded. Traffic was light. Liar. We sat down for dinner, just the two of us. She asked about work. I pretended to care about how her NGO fundraiser was going. The fork in my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 kilos. Midway through dinner, she looked up and said, You've been quiet lately. Everything okay? I forced a smile. Just tired. More lies. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. I kept remembering her words, he's suspicious already. So it wasn't just in my head. She knew I was close. And instead of coming clean, she was scrambling to cover her tracks. That hurt the most. I went to Noor's room later that night. She was fast asleep, her favorite stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. I sat by her bed and just stared at her little face, peaceful, innocent. My daughter. No matter what the DNA said. I whispered, Noor, I don't care what happens. You're mine. You'll always be mine. But in the back of my mind, I was haunted. Who is Adiel? How long has this been going on? And why did she let me raise a child that might not even be mine without telling me the truth? 2 days later, Kamran the private investigator called me. I have something. But you're not going to like it. His voice was flat, cautious. I met him in a quiet corner of a park late at night. He handed me a folder. Inside were photos. Photos of Maywish at a cafe, sitting across from a man I didn't recognize, laughing, smiling, holding his hand. The timestamp said it was just last week. Kamran spoke gently. That's Adiel, ex-colleague. They used to work together at a media firm before her NGO job. My stomach dropped. So this wasn't some stranger. This was someone from her past. Someone I had never even known existed. There's more, Kamran added. I pulled some background on him. He moved back to the city about a year ago. They've been meeting regularly for at least 4 months. I couldn't breathe. 4 months. 4 months of secrets. Of smiling in my face while lying behind my back. Of letting me believe we were fine. I thanked Kamran, walked to my car, and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel like it could hold me together. Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Because now I had proof. But the question still burned inside me. What exactly was she hiding? Was it just an affair? Or was there something far worse buried beneath it all? The next morning, I couldn't sit still. Kamran's photos played in my head like a loop I couldn't pause. Maywish. Adiel. Holding hands like teenagers. Laughing like they didn't just shatter a family. I wasn't just hurt. Anymore, I was angry. I needed to see him. So, I did something reckless. I followed Maywish the next day. She told me she had a volunteer meeting in the evening. I acted normal, nodded like a good husband, even helped her pick out her scarf. But the moment she left, I tailed her in my car, careful not to get too close. She didn't go to the NGO office. Instead, she drove to a quiet residential area in Goldberg, parked in front of a modest white house, and walked right in without even knocking. Like she belonged there. I waited. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then 2. My hands clenched the steering wheel so tight they turned numb. My mind kept spiraling. Was she with him? Was Noor even his child? I couldn't take it anymore. I got out of the car, walked up to the gate, and rang the bell. No one answered. So I rang it again. This time, harder. Then the door creaked open. It wasn't Maywish who opened it. It was him, Adiel. And he didn't look surprised to see me. He just gave me a long, almost pitying look. like he'd been waiting for this moment. Like he knew I would eventually show up. Farhan, he said, calm as ever. You shouldn't be here. I didn't say a word. My blood was boiling. Where's Maywish? I asked, voice low. She's inside. Talking to someone important, he replied. I pushed past him, and what I saw inside destroyed what little was left of me. Maywish was in the living room, not alone. Sitting beside her was a little girl, no older than Noor. She had the same dimpled cheeks, the same dark curls. And then I heard Maywish say something I'll never forget. Beta, this is the uncle I told you about. Uncle? I stood frozen, unable to speak. Maywish turned pale the moment she saw me. Farhan, what are you doing here? She stammered. I should be asking you that, I snapped, my voice shaking. She looked at Adiel, then at the little girl, and I saw it. Guilt. Shame. Panic. She stood up slowly. I was going to tell you everything. I didn't know how. Who is she? I demanded. Adiel stepped forward. Her name is Amani. She's my daughter. I stared at the girl again and suddenly, I understood. The timelines, the secrecy, the DNA test, everything. Maywish's silence wasn't just about an affair. She'd had a child with Adiel years ago, and somehow that child had ended up as mine. Noor wasn't my daughter by mistake. She was never meant to be mine at all. I couldn't breathe. The walls around me felt like they were closing in. Maywish's lips were moving, trying to explain something, but all I could hear was the pounding in my ears. The girl looked just like Noor. The resemblance was terrifying. Farhan, listen to me, Maywish pleaded, stepping toward me, tears already forming in her eyes. No, I snapped. No more lies. No more soft explanations. Tell me the truth. Right now. She stood there, frozen, her shoulders trembling. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I laughed harsh and hollow. You didn't mean it? You let me believe Noor was mine for 8 years. You built our life on a lie, Maywish. I thought I was doing the right thing, she whispered, voice cracking. I didn't even know I was pregnant when Adiel left. He cut all contact. I tried to reach him, but he vanished. And then you came into my life. My stomach twisted. So, I was the backup plan? No, never, she cried. You were everything to me. You are. I didn't want Noor to grow up without a father. And when you stepped in so kind, so loving he couldn't tell you, I was scared you'd leave. I shook my head, reeling. So instead, you gave me a daughter and a lie. You let me name her, raise her, love her like she was mine. Tears streamed down her face. She is yours, Farhan. Maybe not by blood, but in every other way that matters. You're her world. Adiel stepped in then, quiet but firm. I didn't even know she existed until recently. When I came back, I saw Noor's photo by accident on a mutual friend's feed. I did the math. I reached out to Maywish and she panicked. I glared at him. And what, now you want to take her back? Be the hero dad you abandoned before she was even born? His face tensed. No. I just want what's best for her. I turned to Maywish, furious. Did you plan this? Were you going to tell me and all? Or were you just waiting for the right time to rip my heart out? She sobbed, covering her mouth. I didn't know how to fix it. I thought if I ignored it long enough, it would go away. But then the DNA test happened, and the truth came out. I cut in coldly. The room fell silent. Amani looked between us, confused and scared, clutching Maywish's dupatta. I didn't just lose Noor today, I said softly. I lost you. Maywish reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Don't. I still love you, Farhan, she whispered, broke him. That never changed. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I loved. The woman who gave me joy, stability, a family. And also the woman who had been lying to me every single day for nearly a decade. I don't even know who you are anymore, I muttered. Then I turned and walked out the door. I didn't look back. Because if I did, I wasn't sure I'd have the strength to leave. I didn't go home that night. I drove aimlessly for hours, the city lights a blur through tear-stained eyes. Every red signal, every honking horn, every dark alley felt like a reflection of my soul, confused, broken, and directionless. I ended up in front of my parents' house at 2 a.m. My mother opened the door in her nightgown, startled. "Farhan, Beta? What happened?" I didn't say a word. I just hugged her. And I broke. Days passed. I didn't answer Maywish's calls. I didn't respond to her messages. I didn't even open the door when she showed up outside my parents' gate with Noor, crying and begging to talk. I wasn't ready. How do you face someone who destroyed your entire reality? I watched Noor from the window that day. She clutched her teddy bear, eyes scanning the house like she was searching for her father. And it hit me. No matter what Maywish did, Noor was still innocent. She was my daughter. Not in blood, maybe, but in love. In memories. In scraped knees and bedtime stories and school runs. So I called her school. Scheduled a time to see her during recess. When she saw me waiting near the swings, her face lit up like it always did. "Baba!" She ran to me and threw her arms around my waist. And just like that time melted, I picked her up and sat with her on the bench. She looked up at me, eyes wide. "Why are you staying at Nana's house?" she asked. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Sometimes grown-ups need space to think, sweetheart." She nodded like she understood. "Are you mad at Mama?" I paused, then said, "A little. But I'm not mad at you. I never could be." She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. "You'll come back home, right?" I kissed the top of her head. "I'll always be where you are, always." Later that evening, I met Maywish at a quiet cafe. She looked tired, drained from crying and sleepless nights. Her hands trembled as she held her chai. "I thought you'd never speak to me again," she said softly. "I almost didn't. I made the worst mistake of my life," she whispered. "I should have told you from the beginning." "You should have," I replied calmly. "You didn't just lie, you robbed me of the choice to know the truth." She nodded, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. "I never stopped loving you, Farhan." I didn't respond. I just stared at the woman I once knew who now felt like a stranger wearing her face. "I'm not ready to come home," I finally said. "And I don't know if I ever will be." Her eyes filled with panic. "But what about Noor? We'll co-parent. I won't abandon her. She's my daughter, no test can change that." "And us?" she asked, voice barely audible. I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, "Us died the day you choose silence over truth." I stood up, leaving enough rupees for the chai on the table. As I walked away, I didn't feel angry anymore. Just empty. Weeks turned into months. I found a new apartment closer to Noor's school. She spent weekends with me, and we made it feel like home pizza Fridays, movie nights, silly dance battles in the living room. I stayed civil with Maywish for Noor's sake. We spoke only when necessary. As for Adil, he didn't push for involvement. I think he knew he had lost his chance years ago. Maywish told me later he moved to Dubai. Maybe to start over. Maybe to forget. But I couldn't forget. I learned something through all of this. Sometimes, the deepest cuts don't come from enemies. They come from the people who once swore they'd never hurt you. But wounds heal. Slowly. Quietly. And one day, you wake up and realize you're breathing again. You're laughing again. You're not the same person, but maybe, just maybe, you're stronger. Noor and I were at the park a few weeks ago. She looked up at me with her big, curious eyes and asked, "Baba, if I'm not your real daughter, do you still love me the same?" I knelt in front of her, held her face in my hands, and said, "You are more than real to me. You're mine. Always will be." She smiled. "Good. Because I already told my class you're the best dad in the world." And in that moment, I knew. Truth can break you. But real love puts the pieces back together. Even if some pieces never quite fit the same again.